Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking all about tire and wheel balancing, and so hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. Now, just to be clear, I don't claim to be a certified expert on this topic. Rather, I'm just sharing what I've learned over the last few months from industry experts as I've tried to sort out some of the balancing issues here on my truck. And really, this video is more geared toward folks with heavy-duty trucks, you know, whether you've got a dually like me or even a single rear wheel truck. I suppose it could also apply to folks with, you know, larger, heavier off-road tires, maybe on a Jeep or off-road vehicle. But basically any situation where balancing a tire can be more problematic compared to, you know, the basic passenger car highway tires. To give some context, if you're one of my subscribers, then you know that I put on these new Falcon Wild Peak AT3Ws a few months back, and I've put a little over, say, 3,000 miles on them so far. No significant issues to report, by the way, and I'll try to do a more long-term review on them in the future. But my balancing journey started when I had these Wild Peaks, which, by the way, they're an OEM tire size. But when I had these balanced and mounted on my truck. Of course, these are the original factory wheels, the rims here. And after I had them installed, I drove a couple hundred miles, and then I discovered this wheel weight on my driveway. And actually about a week later, I found another one, a second wheel weight, again on my driveway. You know, I would think if you're gonna lose one of these wheel weights, then it would fall off somewhere randomly while you're driving along the road at a higher speed, right? But it definitely was frustrating and definitely unsettling to find the wheel weights in my driveway like that after having, you know, new tires balanced and mounted and everything. And I've never personally encountered this problem before, you know, having wheel weights fall off. And so my first reaction naturally was to call the tire shop that mounted them in the first place and go back and get them rebalanced and fixed, right? But after I discussed the problem over the phone with the GM, the general manager there, I just didn't have a lot of confidence that if I went back to that same shop, then the problem would be fixed permanently. At the same time, as I was, you know, kind of thinking about all my options, I remembered that several subscribers previously commented on a video I published. I think it was the truck build video that I did here. And they recommended that I look into Centramatic wheel balancers for my dually. And I wasn't super familiar with them at the time, but it was at that point I began to, you know, explore them in more detail. And of course, long story short, I decided to give them a try, really in hopes that it would permanently solve my balancing issue and then, you know, improve the ride quality. And another side benefit would be potentially not needing wheel weights on the truck wheels to begin with. And I guess I just really developed a lot more confidence in the science, you know, the physics behind the Centramatics. And so I published a video last December explaining in more detail, you know, why I went with the Centramatics. I showed what the install looked like and all that. And by the way, I plan to do a follow-up video, a review on the Centramatic wheel balancers next week. So make sure you're subscribed for that video. But basically, that's the backstory of what triggered this journey of sorts into balancing the tires and wheels on my truck. So that being said, in today's video, I want to focus on what I've learned in the process, and hopefully it'll save you some time and money. Now, the first point I want to make is that not all tire shops that balance tires are equal. And, you know, this may seem obvious at first glance. I mean, like anything in life, when there's a project that involves skilled labor, specialized equipment, right? Different vendors, different people are going to deliver different results, right? But I had always just assumed that when a tire shop balances a tire, they balance the tire, you know, it's done properly. And I guess I was just under the impression that there's not a lot of room for error. You know, it's either completed or it isn't completed. But I learned, especially when it comes to heavier tires combined with, you know, dually tires, some tire shops may not have the equipment that is, let's just say, necessarily optimized to handle those types of wheel and tire combinations. And the sad part about it is the tire shop that I went to initially, which, by the way, has great reviews, great service, no complaints there. But I remember while I was there when they were working on it, the GM mentioned that they were struggling a little bit with the first wheel on the balancing machine. But they said, you know, they figured it out eventually, and I just took his word on it. Well, it turns out there are many different brands of wheel balancing machines out there, and not all are created equal. You know, some are more sophisticated than others. Some have different mounting points, different adapters to accommodate, you know, different styles of wheels, like these dually wheels here. And so basically the shop that I went to initially, I mean, I think they did the best job that they could with their equipment to balance the tires. But in the end, it really left me with a less than desirable result. Well, a huge shout out to my viewers. You know, I'm always thankful for your feedback and comments. And in a previous video, I had a viewer in particular comment and recommend that I check out a tire shop that has a Hunter Road Force Elite wheel balancer. You know, it's kind of a mouthful, but the manufacturer is Hunter, and then the model is the Road Force Elite. And so I researched it some more, and you know, it seems like it's probably one of the more advanced wheel balancers that's on the market right now. Definitely one of the more expensive ones. I mean, depending on the configuration, if you look it up, it could be priced upwards of $20,000 or more at retail as brand new. But all that to say, it's my understanding that it's a very advanced wheel balancer. You know, it's designed and engineered specifically to reduce the number of callbacks from customers. You know, a situation where you go get your tires balanced, but they're not done properly, you end up going back to the shop, and I mean, essentially that's wasted time, wasted revenue for the shop, right? And so it's my understanding that this particular balancer is designed with a greater level of precision to reduce operator error. But then it also gives more flexibility to the installer with different kinds of, you know, wheel weights out there, and I'll talk about that in my next point. So anyway, definitely check it out yourself. There's a ton of videos on YouTube. Most of them are kind of sales types videos to try to get shops to buy them and have them in their shops, right? But it's the Road Force Elite balancer, so definitely check it out. But after I researched it further, you know, I definitely had a lot more confidence that if I could find a shop in my area that had that specific wheel balancer, then, you know, chances are I'd get a better balance overall on my truck. And so thankfully on the manufacturer's website, on the Hunter website, they have a locate page that allows you to find, you know, shops in your area that specifically own and operate the Road Force Elite balancer. So that made it super easy for me to find one. And what I found is most of the shops within a 25-mile radius of where I live that had one of these, they were typically car dealerships. I mean, I'd guess there's probably, let's just say 50 or more tire shops within a 25-mile radius of where I live. And of those 50 tire shops, only 5 had the Road Force Elite balancer. And out of those 5, I think all but one were car dealerships. And I think the reason is probably the cost. You know, they seem to be expensive enough that probably the average tire shop just can't justify the cost there. Whereas maybe at car dealerships, they have a little bit more capital perhaps, and so they can afford to own one of those machines in the first place. But all that to say, if you can find one of these in your shop, one of the Hunter Road Force Elite machines, you know, personally, I have a lot more confidence that you're going to end up with tires and wheels that are balanced properly, especially when it comes to something heavier, you know, or just a dually tire situation. I think there's going to be a higher level of precision compared to a shop that doesn't have a Road Force Elite balancer. And I just want to stop and clarify, I'm not saying that all the other tire shops, you know, all the other tire balancers are garbage or inferior. You know, the truth is you may be an installer yourself watching this, or maybe you've got a go-to tire shop with techs that are well experienced to the point where maybe their know-how exceeds the equipment and they can do a first-class job regardless of what balancer they're using, right? So I want to be clear in saying that I'm sure there are plenty of highly skilled techs out there that can deliver those, you know, first-class results when it comes to balancing. And if you are one or you know one, that's great, because it seems like skilled laborers like that are in short supply in general in our current times. But for me personally, after my experience, I just have a lot more confidence in the Hunter Road Force Elite balancer, combined with, of course, a tech who's trained on it naturally. And I mean, basically, I have more confidence that I'm going to get the best results in the end. So that's the first point I wanted to make. Again, just that not all balancers are equal. So definitely check out that Road Force Elite. But the second point I want to make is that not all wheel weights are equal. And before this experience, I thought there were only two types of wheel weights, right? You got your clip-on weights like I've got here, and they of course go around the ring on the outside of the rim. And it's kind of more the old school style. And then you've got your adhesive or tape weights, which are the more modern style that get adhered to the inside of the rims where it's kind of hidden, right? And I don't know about you, but I remember growing up and it seemed like hubcaps were on the majority of wheels. But nowadays, pretty much every car, it seems like, even base models, they have more alloy wheels or some kind of fancier wheel pattern that doesn't have that ring around the rim. And so it doesn't take a clip-on weight, it takes the adhesive tape weight. And I think that's what's driven the shift, mainly to tape-on weights. And of course, they're more hidden, less visible. But here I've got a dually truck, and these are the factory wheels, and it does have that ring on the outside for clip-on weights. And so I just assumed that all clip-on weights are the same until I had these Wild Peaks mounted and balanced. And I remember noticing immediately after the shop finished and I took delivery of the truck, I noticed that the weights installed by the shop, they look different compared to the ones that came with it from the factory on the original OEM Nexans. And I remember, I was finding those wheel weights in my driveway that had fallen off the truck after I got these Wild Peaks mounted. And so the truth is that I learned there's actually 5 to 6 kind of standardized clip-on weight styles. So this is just one of them right here. And then within each style or profile of clip-on weight, there's of course different weight amounts, right? Like this one I think is a 2-ouncer right here. So you might have a 1/4 ounce, half ounce, all the way up to maybe 3 or 4 ounces in different sizes, right? And so really for a tire shop to properly handle and balance all the different potential wheel and tire combinations out there, they might need to stock 30 or 40 different unique SKUs, maybe 50 or more, with all the different profiles and then different weight amounts combined. They really need to stock all those different ones in order to be able to properly service vehicles, and that's just for clip-on weights. Whereas for the adhesive tape weights, it's really a much simpler process because there's really only maybe one variety or unique SKU. They're almost kind of modular, meaning you only need a single 1/4 ounce tape weight, and then you just add on, kind of like building Lego blocks. You just line them up kind of like soldiers. And so the point I'm trying to make is most shops are going to have plenty of weights on hand when it comes to those basic adhesive, those basic tape weights, right? Because that's the majority of what cars have today, with the wheels that have no lip or ring on the outside. And really for me, every car, truck that I've owned, I think in the last decade, has used those tape weights. Even my 2016, I had a 3/4 ton truck, same thing, tape adhesive weights on the inside. The only ones that haven't were the last two dually trucks, this Ram here and the Chevy that I had before it. They're the only ones that have required the older style clip-on weights. And so I learned that not every tire shop keeps a healthy stock of all the different clip-on weights and sizes. And sadly, if you go to one of those shops, they may not tell you. Perhaps the technician, maybe they don't know the difference in different profiles on the wheel weights, or maybe they don't want to admit it, right? And so then you end up with a weight like I did that's clipped to your wheel that really isn't the best fit. And that would explain exactly why I was finding these wheel weights later on in my driveway. So I learned that not all wheel weights are the same, and you can actually look these up close online and you'll see they have a different profile on the clip portion that goes around the ring there. And this particular style that I've got right here, it is not compatible with my wheels, and that's exactly why they were falling off oddly in my driveway. So if you've got a dually like me, my advice is before you go to a shop, double check with them and make sure that they stock the right clip-on weights that match the profile of your wheels. Otherwise, any balancing that they do, it's just going to be a waste. And so that was an important lesson that I learned. Now, third point I want to make is going to kind of carry forward the wheel weight discussion, and that is depending on the imbalance of your tire and wheel combination, you may need wheel weights on both the inside and outside of your rims, of your wheels. And you know, when I published my initial tire reveal video several months back, I remember I had a lot of viewers comment on the wheel weights that were visible on the outside of my wheels. Not all of them had them. I think it was maybe half the wheels did originally. And several commented that the wheel weights stood out and that it was a rookie, you know, or amateur installer that installed them. Well, it turns out it kind of was an amateur in the end, not because of the wheel weights on the outside, but because the wrong profile of clip-on weights, right? But I'll just mention, when I ordered my truck from Ram and I spec'd the all-terrain tires, it came with those Nexen all-terrains, and the truck was actually delivered with wheel weights on all 4 tires visible on the outside. And that's of course direct from the factory there. I just kind of got used to it, I guess. But I will say, when I saw the wheels without the weights, especially the, you know, black rims that I've got here with the Night Edition, then I completely agree. I mean, it looks a lot better without the shiny silver weight sticking out. And so when I installed my Centramatic wheel balancers previously, I took off any of the remaining outside weights. I think I had 2 or 3 in total across all the tires that were visible. And you know, I definitely like the look better, but the point I'm trying to make is, yes, you can ask a tire shop to only put the wheel weights on the inside of your rims where they're not, you know, visible. But depending on the imbalance of your, you know, your wheel and tire combination, and maybe even the accuracy of their equipment there, they may be forced to put a clip-on weight on the outside of your rim, again, just depending on your unique, you know, tire and wheel combination. It might be that you can get away with all the weights on the outside of the rims, right? But oftentimes, in order to have that, you know, perfectly balanced tire and wheel combination, there has to be a weight on the outside. And so that's another thing that I learned in the process. And you know, it makes sense if you think about it, because depending on where the imbalance is, you know, weight on the inside of your wheel versus the outside, that's going to have a different impact to you know, to counteract that force. And sometimes it might be that you have options for a smaller weight on the outside versus a larger weight on the inside to counteract that same imbalance, right? I mean, it's really going to be unique to your tire and wheel combination. So it really just depends. But on that note, when you have dually wheels, like, you know, like I have here on my truck, it is possible to ask the shop, when they balance and install your tires, it's possible to ask them to put tape weights on the inside of your front wheels, you know, because this has a convex shape, right? It's coming out at us, meaning that they can hide a tape weight on the inside there to take the place of a clip-on weight on the ring out there. And of course, they can still put a clip-on weight on the inner ring of the wheel as well. And that's exactly what I did here on my wheels. You can see on the front, I've got no weights on both of the tires, on both of the wheels here, because they used a tape weight on the inside that's hidden there on the dually wheel. However, on the rear tires here, it turned out that it actually needed a weight here on the outside. Not a big one. I think this is a 1.5 ouncer right here, you know, pretty small. But basically, in order for them to be perfectly balanced, I needed a clip-on weight on the outer ring here. In fact, going back to the Hunter Road Force Elite, the balancer, I actually watched, and the interface, it gave them options to, you know, prefer the inside ring of the wheel, but in the end, it was necessary to have a small weight here on the outer ring. And actually, I could have also chosen to do some black tape-on weights, you know, kind of on the inside of the rim profile here. And, you know, for me personally, I'd rather have a clip-on weight, but I have seen some people with dualies do that, where they put adhesive tape weights on the inside, and maybe for some it doesn't show up as much, but I really like the smaller clip-on weight. And, you know, really guys, you don't see it much. I mean, it blends in. You can see that I painted it black. And I'd rather personally have a, you know, perfectly balanced wheel and tire combination and a very small clip-on weight on the outside, compared to, you know, skipping it just for the sake of the visual look. I mean, after all, this is a dually pickup truck. So anyway, that's what I learned about the wheel weights. And after I found a local shop that had the Hunter Road Force Elite balancer, I actually drew up a quick diagram, you know, given that my goal was to minimize the wheel weights on the outside of my rims. I wanted to make sure that we were on the same page, the tire shop and me, and so I gave the diagram to the tech so that as he was rebalancing all 6 tires, I'd end up with results that I was looking for in the end. And again, I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page. So I laid everything out, real detailed. And actually, if you'd like a copy of that diagram that I made to take with you, if you're gonna get your truck tires balanced, I will include a share link in the description below where you can download it for free. And so hopefully that'll make it a bit smoother for you. But in the end, I'm really pleased with the end result. Like I said, I got to see the Road Force Elite in action. And I think there was 2 things that stood out to me. The first was the overall interface. It seemed very much foolproof, very user-friendly, to the point that, someone who's trained on it, it would minimize that operator error effect. But then the second thing I noticed is it gave the installer a lot of options. And so, he could prefer the inner ring with clip-on weights and then opt for tape on and kind of toggle back and forth between the different options on the, especially on my front wheels like I was showing you. And so it just really seemed to give a lot more options. Of course, it drops a laser onto the wheel like most balancers to show them where to put it. But it just seemed like a very accurate, real precise piece of equipment. And in the end, for me personally, I just have a lot more confidence that my wheels and tires are balanced properly now, both from seeing the machine in use, but then also the end result, just driving, how smooth it rides now. All right, well, that's mostly everything I learned in my journey to balance my tires and wheels on the truck. The only other thing I'll mention is that if you saw my initial video when the tires were first mounted, there were quite a few small kind of chips on the wheels, with these being painted black. Just a lot of little chips and scratches. And naturally it can be tricky when you've got black painted wheels like this and you're removing wheel weights that kind of clip onto the rims there, and they make special tools for that to minimize it, right? Probably the first shop that did my wheels and tires, they probably left a few more chips and scratches than necessary. But the good news is I just wanted to show you that I discovered it's really not that hard to touch up, surprisingly. And so what I did is I came with some painter's tape and I made a tape line right on this edge where it's creased from vertical to horizontal. I made a tape line all the way around the rim like that, and then of course I taped on the tires themselves, because I knew when I sprayed with an aerosol can, I didn't want to overspray, of course, but I also knew I would probably see a line where the paint's ever so slightly thicker with that extra layer of paint. But by putting your tape line right on that edge there, it's virtually invisible. I'll try to go up close so you can kind of see. If I put my finger here, I can barely feel that there's a little bit thicker paint on this outside where the chips were. But I basically did the whole way, all the way around, and it looks really good, especially from a distance. You're not going to see those chips ever. And so I did want to put that out there. If you're in the same boat as me and you got these nice black factory wheels and they're chipped, it's really not that big of a deal to come back and touch them up in the end. Which, speaking of which, if you're going to special order a Ram truck, that's something to think about with that night edition. I love the night edition. I think it looks great on the truck. But that is something to think about, that eventually you're probably going to get some chips around the rim, especially as you get different tires put on there. So just something to consider, compared to the standard polished aluminum, the silver there. Just something to consider if you're special ordering. Anyways, guys, I hope this information is helpful, especially if you're considering getting new tires on your truck, or maybe you're like me trying to sort out some balancing issues. So hopefully this will save you some time. But like I said, next week I plan to do a full review on the Centramatic wheel balancers, because you probably noticed already that they are installed on my truck still. And so I'm going to give you the full scoop on them after putting about 3,000 miles or so on them. And I'm going to recommend really who I think will benefit the most from them. So stay tuned for that video next week. But in the meantime, definitely drop me a comment below if you have any feedback or questions. And as always, thanks for watching.